Okay. Well, we're approaching the anniversary of the September the 11th atrocities in New York and Washington. Here in London, we had, of course, the July 7th bombings. Actually, the day after, the British authorities were given the decision to hold the 2012 Olympics. Of course, we've just had the Olympics in Beijing. So it's all come to mind, really. So I want to tell a story, basically, concerning the war on terror. And it's been going on a lot longer than when George Bush came to power. And in a sense, I didn't believe when I first heard that some of the things that certain segments of our of the Islamic community in this country were involved in. I didn't believe it, and I certainly would tell this story to anyone who I met today who is still in denial of Islamic terrorist organisations operating Al Qaeda as being a name that's bandied around, but certainly, as I'd like to tell this story of what my understanding has been. I used to drive in the West Midlands, Birmingham area, and this actually stuck in my memory. I don't know why, but it did at the time. Working a lot in areas of Birmingham and the West Midlands which had a high population of Muslims, and there was halal shops, butchers, etc., all over the place. I remember hearing a story about the some community leaders who were protesting on television, on BBC TV and BBC Radio WM, that the British government had ignored the plight of a small number of British Muslims who had been arrested in the Yemen on charges of terrorism. And they were appealing for the Muslim community to actually stand up and write petitions to the Foreign Office in order to get them to help these guys out more. That was the end of the story. As I heard, it went on for several days. I listened to BBC Radio WM and etc. And but that was the last I heard of it. Then in 1999, I was attending a church in Wallingford in Oxfordshire. I'm not going to give the name out, but it wasn't a mainstream denominational church. But I don't want to give the name out in case someone with wrong motives tries to do something. But this church supports a missionary in actually to the Yemen, actually, in fact. And he'd come over to give a talk, as to say, to progress as to what the church was actually funding, and the kind of work he was into, and what God was doing in Yemen, and of all the miracles and things that were taking place, the Bibles that were being smuggled in, etc., etc., en masse. The Yemeni authorities don't mind individual Christians bringing their Bible in, but they take the view that when you bring in 6,000 or 7,000 copies of the Bible, you're not using it for personal use. So they would confiscate such quantities of stuff, being a Muslim country themselves. But he was telling me about some of the people he works with, and he was telling me the story about these nuns. And the persecution these nuns are facing day in, day out, as they work amongst the poor and those in need, at the same time giving Christian witness in the Yemen. And he was telling me about to the extremes of people will go to. A few months previously to him coming back to the shores here, 2 of them were shot with semi-automatic rifles. They weren't raped, they were not robbed, there was no apparent motive. They were just shot, ambushed in the streets, and in broad daylight, from what I understand. by some unknown assailants. And he was saying that part of the ministry of these nuns is to go into the prisons. And just before coming over to England at the time, they relayed to him about one particular prisoner in a prison there, who was actually English. He was, yes, of Middle Eastern descent, but he was English. He was from the West Midlands area in England, from Birmingham, and he and his 5 colleagues, so it was, had been sent over to the Yemen by the local community leaders with their approval and knowledge to commit acts of terror against infidels and those who were not believers in Islam and were working against the Islamic religion. And these nuns were among their hit lists. And he said to them, I can't understand. This English guy said, I cannot understand. You know everything I was over here to do. You were our targets. And yet, week in, week out, you come here, you talk to me, you treat me like a human being. And I can't understand this. He's quite broken over it, apparently. Or he was at the time. This is obviously 9 years ago now. Yeah, but he just can't get his head around after all the things he was told about Christians and and what should they deserve to happen to them. Now the very people he was sent over here to kill by these same religious leaders and community leaders, probably the same, or with their knowledge, going on TV saying these guys are innocent, they should be released by the British government. And here he is in a prison in Yemen saying, yes, I did it. And the only people who have any mercy and kindness to me are the very ones we were sent over to kill. So the war on terror has been going on for a long time, and we can only hope and pray that if Islam is a religion of peace, that for those members of the Islamic community and members of our community who, like me at the time, did not believe that English Muslims were going over to the Middle East to commit crimes of terror, let alone commit crimes of terror on these shores. We can only hope that they will do whatever they can to maintain their integrity and work for the peace of our society and for a better society. And it's the only way the war is going to be won, by the changing of people's hearts. And I believe, as these nuns did, that can only be done through Jesus Christ. And I pray that many hearts will be changed, and that many people who might even right now be in support of these Islamic terrorists will think deep in their hearts, is it true that my religion is a religion of peace? Jesus said, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, pray for those who persecute you. And I speak to Muslims now. You consider Jesus to be a prophet. If he's a prophet sent by God, though you may not believe as a Christian that he is God, I think you still need to listen to him. I think you still need to take into account what he's got to say. God bless you.